Have you ever looked at your patio, balcony, porch, or tiny backyard and thought, I wish I had more room to grow food? Because most people assume container gardening has limits. They think once you've grown a few herbs and maybe one tomato plant, that's it, game over. No more space, no more possibilities. But that's completely wrong. The truth is, some of the highest producing, easiest growing, most rewarding plants on Earth actually thrive in containers. In many cases, they grow better in containers because you control the soil, the drainage, the nutrients, and the environment. And once you understand which plants truly love container life, your tiny garden suddenly transforms into a food-producing machine. Today, we're expanding your container garden with 10 incredible plants that can completely change how much food, flavor, color, and productivity you get from a small space. Some of these plants produce continuously for months. Some save you serious money at the grocery store, and a few are so productive they'll overwhelm you with harvests if you grow them correctly. But here's what I want to know before we start. What's the one plant you've always wanted to grow in containers but never tried? Drop it in the comments right now and tell me where you're watching from, because I love seeing container gardeners from all over the world building mini food forests in tiny spaces. Let's expand your container garden the smart way. Tomatoes. If there's one plant that proves container gardening is powerful, it's tomatoes. Nothing transforms a balcony or patio faster than a thriving tomato plant loaded with fruit. And the crazy part is this: many people actually get better tomatoes in containers than they do in the ground. Why? Because tomatoes hate poorly drained soil. They hate competition from weeds. They hate inconsistent watering. Containers solve all three problems instantly. But most people fail with container tomatoes for one simple reason. They use containers that are way too small. A tomato plant is not a tiny herb. It's a nutrient-hungry, root-expanding production machine. If you force it into a tiny decorative pot, it struggles from day one. The roots overheat, the soil dries too fast, and fruit production drops dramatically. For indeterminate varieties, the ones that keep growing and producing all season, you want at least a 5-gallon container. Bigger is even better. Determinate or dwarf varieties can survive in smaller pots, but even then, more root space equals more production. Now here's where things get interesting. The secret to massive tomato harvests in containers is vertical growth. Tomatoes naturally want to climb and sprawl. If you cage or stake them properly, you turn a small footprint into a vertical food factory. Cherry tomatoes are especially insane in containers. One healthy plant can produce hundreds of tomatoes over a season. Hundreds! And unlike store-bought tomatoes that taste watery and bland, container-grown tomatoes harvested at peak ripeness taste sweet, rich, and intensely flavorful. Sunlight is critical. Tomatoes need 6 to 8 hours of direct sun minimum. More sun usually means more fruit. If your tomatoes are getting tall but not producing heavily, lack of sunlight is often the problem. Watering consistency matters too. Tomatoes hate extreme fluctuations. Bone dry one day and soaking wet the next creates blossom end rot, cracking, and stress. Deep, steady watering is the goal. And let's talk fertilizer, because this is where beginners accidentally ruin their plants. Too much nitrogen creates giant leafy monsters with barely any fruit. You want balanced feeding early on, then more phosphorus and potassium once flowering begins. Here's another trick most beginners never hear about. Bury the stem deeply when planting. Tomatoes grow roots along buried stems. The deeper you plant, the stronger the root system becomes. Stronger roots equals stronger plants and bigger harvests. And honestly, few things in gardening compare to stepping outside and picking warm tomatoes directly off the vine. Once you experience that, grocery store tomatoes become disappointing forever. Plant 2. Peppers. Peppers are one of the most underrated container plants on Earth. Hot peppers, sweet peppers, bell peppers, banana peppers, jalapenos, they absolutely thrive in pots. In fact, containers often prefer peppers because they love warmth. Containers heat up faster than garden soil, especially dark-colored pots, and peppers respond with explosive growth. The biggest mistake people make is treating peppers like fragile plants. They're tougher than most gardeners realize. Once established, peppers can handle heat extremely well, and slightly stressful conditions often increase fruit production. A 3 to 5 gallon container works well for most pepper varieties. Use loose, well-draining potting mix because soggy roots destroy pepper plants quickly. Now here's something fascinating about peppers. The more you harvest, the more they produce. Leaving ripe peppers sitting on the plant signals it to slow down. Continuous harvesting keeps the plant in production mode. Hot peppers are especially productive. A single jalapeno or cayenne plant can produce dozens upon dozens of peppers over a season. Some gardeners end up with more peppers than they know what to do with.
And peppers are perfect for small space gardeners because they're beautiful as well as productive. Some varieties look ornamental with glossy leaves and colorful fruits hanging like decorations. If you want maximum production, give peppers full sun and avoid overwatering. Slightly dry soil between waterings encourages stronger roots and healthier plants. One thing many beginners don't realize is that peppers are long-season plants. They start slowly and people panic too early, but once summer heat arrives, peppers explode with growth. Another advantage? Peppers are surprisingly portable. If weather changes suddenly, you can move containers to protect plants from heavy storms or cold nights. And if you live in a warm climate, pepper plants can survive for multiple years. Some gardeners treat them almost like small shrubs, bringing them indoors or protecting them during colder periods. Imagine stepping outside and harvesting fresh peppers whenever you want, instead of paying ridiculous grocery store prices for tiny packs. That's the power of container gardening.
Lettuce. Lettuce might be the easiest way to make your container garden feel instantly productive. Why? Because lettuce grows fast, really fast. Some varieties are ready for harvesting in as little as 30 days. That means you can plant, harvest, replant, and repeat continuously throughout the season. And unlike large crops that demand huge containers, lettuce works beautifully in shallow planters, window boxes, grow bags, and small pots. This is one of the smartest plants for beginners because success comes quickly. Fast results build confidence. Now here's the biggest advantage of container lettuce: pest control. Slugs, snails, and soil pests destroy lettuce-grown ground constantly. Elevating lettuce in containers reduces many of those problems immediately. Loose-leaf varieties are especially powerful because you don't harvest the entire plant at once. Instead, you harvest outer leaves continuously while the center keeps growing. One container can provide salads for weeks. And the flavor difference is unbelievable. Fresh lettuce harvested minutes before eating tastes crisp, sweet, and alive compared to the tired bags sitting under fluorescent lights in grocery stores.
Lettuce also gives you flexibility. Too much summer heat? Move containers into partial shade. Unexpected cold? Bring them closer to protection. Most people think lettuce only grows in cool weather, but strategic container placement extends the growing season dramatically.
Now, let's talk about succession planting, because this is how smart gardeners create non-stop harvests. Instead of planting one giant batch, sow small amounts every 2 weeks. By the time one container slows down, another is ready. You never run out. And container lettuce saves real money. Salad greens are expensive, especially organic ones, yet lettuce is one of the cheapest and easiest crops to grow yourself. One warning though, don't overcrowd containers. Beginners love planting too densely, but overcrowding reduces airflow and creates weak growth. Give lettuce breathing room. Also, consistent moisture matters. Lettuce becomes bitter under stress. Even watering creates sweeter, more tender leaves. And once you realize how easy lettuce is, you'll start experimenting with spinach, arugula, mustard greens, and kale too. Suddenly, your small patio becomes a living salad bar. Plant 4. Strawberries. Strawberries in containers feel almost unfair because they're so productive in so little space. A hanging basket, a vertical tower, a window box, a shallow planter. Strawberries adapt beautifully to all of them. And here's why containers are amazing for strawberries. They keep the fruit cleaner, reduce disease, improve drainage, and make harvesting easier. Ground-grown strawberries often rot against wet soil. Container strawberries stay elevated and healthier. But the real magic is accessibility. Imagine walking onto your balcony and grabbing fresh strawberries directly from the plant whenever you want. That changes how you think about gardening entirely. Now, there are 3 main types of strawberries: June-bearing, ever-bearing, and day-neutral. June-bearing produce one massive harvest. Ever-bearing and day-neutral varieties produce smaller harvests continuously over the season. For containers, continuous producers are often the better choice because you get ongoing rewards instead of one short harvest window. Strawberries love rich, well-draining soil and full sunlight. 6 or more hours of sun keeps them productive and sweet. One critical tip: don't bury the crown too deeply when planting. The crown, where the leaves emerge, should sit slightly above the soil line. Bury it too deeply and rot becomes a problem. Mulching helps too, even in containers. Straw, pine needles, or light mulch help retain moisture and keep roots cooler. And here's something many people overlook: strawberry runners. These long stems produce baby plants. You can root them into new containers and expand your strawberry garden almost endlessly for free. That's one of the beautiful things about container gardening. A single successful plant often turns into many more over time. Birds may become a problem once berries ripen, because birds know exactly when strawberries are perfect. Netting can help if needed. And yes, growing strawberries requires patience initially, but once established, they become one of the most rewarding crops you can grow in small spaces. Plant 5, green onions, are pure container gardening genius. Why? Because they take almost no space, regrow repeatedly, grow fast, and save you constant trips to the grocery store. This is one of the smartest beginner confidence crops because success is nearly guaranteed. You can grow green onions from seeds, starter plants, or even scraps from store-bought onions. Cut the tops, place the roots in water briefly, then plant them into soil. They regrow shockingly fast. And because green onions have shallow roots, they work in small containers that would never support larger crops. But here's the real power: cut and come again harvesting. Instead of pulling the entire plant, snip what you need and let the base regrow. One planting can provide harvests over and over again. Now imagine combining green onions with lettuce, herbs, and spinach in a single compact growing area. Suddenly, tiny spaces become highly productive food systems. Green onions also tolerate partial shade better than many crops, making them useful for less sunny areas. And unlike some demanding vegetables, green onions don't require constant fertilizing or complicated care. Consistent moisture and decent soil are usually enough. One thing you'll notice quickly is how addictive easy harvests become. Once you experience walking outside with scissors and harvesting ingredients fresh before cooking, gardening stops feeling like a hobby and starts feeling practical. Green onions are also excellent companion plants in mixed containers. They don't compete aggressively for space and help maximize production from small areas. And honestly, there's something deeply satisfying about regrowing food from kitchen scraps instead of throwing them away.
Plant 6. Herbs. If your container garden doesn't include herbs, you're leaving enormous value on the table. Because herbs are ridiculously expensive in stores. A tiny plastic pack of basil, cilantro, parsley, or mint costs far more than it should. Yet these plants grow incredibly well in containers. Basil loves warmth and regular harvesting. The more you pinch it back, the bushier it becomes. Mint grows so aggressively that containers are actually the best way to control it. Plant mint directly in the ground and it can spread everywhere. Containers keep it manageable. Rosemary thrives in pots because it prefers excellent drainage. Sage, thyme, oregano, and chives all perform beautifully too. And herbs completely transform cooking. Fresh herbs make ordinary meals taste restaurant quality. Now here's the important thing. Herbs have different personalities. Basil likes more moisture. Rosemary prefers drier conditions. Mint spreads aggressively. Understanding those differences helps you group herbs properly. One mistake beginners make is planting everything together without considering water needs. Mediterranean herbs like rosemary and thyme prefer drier soil than basil or parsley. Sunlight matters too. Most herbs want at least 6 hours of sun, though some tolerate partial shade. Another massive advantage of herbs is how productive they are relative to space. A few containers can supply enormous flavor value. And herbs attract pollinators. Flowering basil, thyme, and oregano bring bees and beneficial insects into your garden ecosystem, helping nearby vegetables produce better too. Drying herbs is another game changer. Excess harvests can be dried and stored for months, turning summer abundance into year-round flavor. Once you start growing herbs, you stop thinking of containers as decorative objects and start seeing them as food-producing assets. Plant 7. Potatoes. Most people think potatoes require huge gardens and endless digging. Completely false. Potatoes are one of the most productive container crops you can grow if you understand the system. Grow bags, buckets, laundry baskets, large pots. Potatoes adapt beautifully to containers because container growing allows controlled hilling. Here's the secret. Potatoes form along buried stems. Every time you add more soil around growing stems, the plant creates more areas for potato production. That means vertical growing dramatically increases yield. A single grow bag can produce a shocking amount of potatoes in a tiny footprint, and harvesting is incredibly satisfying. Instead of digging blindly into the ground, you simply dump the container and uncover your harvest. Now, potatoes do require larger containers. Small pots won't cut it. Deep grow bags or large buckets work best. Use loose potting mix because compacted soil restricts tuber development. Consistent moisture matters too. Potatoes need steady hydration during tuber formation. Extreme dryness followed by flooding creates poor quality harvests. Sunlight is important, though potatoes tolerate slightly less sun than crops like tomatoes. And here's another advantage of container potatoes: disease management. Many soil diseases that affect potatoes become less problematic when using fresh container mix instead of infected garden soil.
You can also experiment with varieties impossible to find in grocery stores: purple potatoes, fingerlings, Yukon Golds, red varieties. The flavor diversity is incredible. And honestly, pulling homegrown potatoes from a container feels like uncovering treasure. It never gets old. Plant 8. Cucumbers. Cucumbers are one of the fastest ways to make a container garden feel lush and productive. The key is vertical growing. If you let cucumbers sprawl everywhere, they consume space quickly. But train them upward on a trellis, cage, or netting, and suddenly you're producing huge amounts of food in a tiny area. Vertical cucumber growing also improves airflow, reduces disease, and keeps fruits cleaner and strainer. Now, cucumbers are thirsty plants. Large leaves lose water rapidly in summer heat. Deep watering is essential. They also feed heavily. Rich soil and regular fertilizing keep vines productive. One mistake beginners make is choosing the wrong varieties. Bush cucumbers work better in smaller containers, while vining types need stronger support structures. And pollination matters. Some cucumber flowers are male, some female. Bees handle pollination naturally outdoors, but limited pollinators can reduce production. Planting flowers nearby helps attract pollinators. Now here's why container cucumbers are amazing. Productivity. Healthy plants produce continuously for weeks. 1 or 2 plants can provide more cucumbers than many families can eat fresh. Harvest frequently because oversized cucumbers become bitter and signal the plant to slow production. And few things taste more refreshing than a cucumber harvested minutes before eating. Crisp, cool, sweet, completely different from store-bought versions sitting in warehouses for days.
Plant 9. Beans. Beans are one of the smartest crops for expanding container productivity because they maximize vertical space while improving soil health. Pole beans climb upward aggressively, turning fences, poles, and trellises into food-producing walls. Bush beans stay compact and productive in medium-sized containers. Now here's something incredible about beans. They actually help the soil by fixing nitrogen. Specialized bacteria on their roots convert atmospheric nitrogen into usable nutrients. That means beans feed themselves better than many crops. Pole beans are especially productive. Once they start producing, harvests can become non-stop. And they grow fast, really fast. Watching bean vines climb upward daily is one of the most satisfying experiences in gardening. Beans also handle moderate container conditions surprisingly well. As long as drainage is good and sunlight is sufficient, they thrive. One important thing, harvest continuously. Mature beans left on the plant reduce future production. And because beans grow vertically, they're perfect for maximizing tiny spaces. A narrow balcony can suddenly produce pounds of food. Scarlet runner beans even add ornamental beauty with bright flowers that attract hummingbirds and pollinators. And fresh beans taste dramatically different from store versions, sweeter, more tender, more flavorful. Plant 10. Dwarf fruit trees. This is where container gardening completely changes people's minds, because most people cannot believe you can grow real fruit trees in containers. But dwarf varieties make it possible. Lemons, figs, apples, peaches, guavas, oranges, all possible in containers with the right setup. Now, dwarf trees aren't tiny because of the fruit. The fruit stays full-sized. The tree itself stays compact. And once established, container fruit trees become long-term investments. Year after year, they continue producing. The key is root management. Large enough containers, excellent drainage, consistent feeding. Fruit trees are heavier feeders than herbs or lettuce because fruit production requires massive energy. Sunlight becomes absolutely critical here. Most fruit trees need full sun for strong flowering and fruiting.
Pruning matters too. Strategic pruning keeps trees manageable while encouraging productivity instead of excessive branch growth. And yes, patience is required. Fruit trees aren't instant gratification crops like lettuce, but the payoff is extraordinary. Imagine harvesting lemons from your patio, or figs from a balcony, or peaches from a container beside your front door. That's not fantasy anymore. That's modern container gardening. One mistake beginners make is ignoring container size. Fruit trees need enough room for healthy root systems. Tiny decorative pots usually lead to weak growth and poor production. Another mistake is inconsistent care. Trees thrive on routine. Regular watering, feeding, and pruning create stability. And honestly, few things impress visitors more than seeing actual fruit trees growing productively in containers.
Expanding smarter, not harder. Now let's talk strategy, because this is where container gardeners either create abundance or create chaos. Most beginners expand too fast. They buy random plants without considering sunlight, watering needs, container size, or vertical space. Smart expansion is different. You build layers. Tall plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, and beans grow upward. Medium plants like peppers and strawberries fill mid-level space. Shallow-rooted crops like lettuce and green onions maximize smaller containers. Herbs fill gaps while attracting pollinators. Fruit trees become long-term anchor plants. Suddenly, your patio becomes a highly efficient food system instead of scattered random pots. Another smart strategy is succession planting. When one crop finishes, another begins. Empty containers become opportunities instead of wasted space. And remember this, containers are movable. That flexibility is a massive advantage over traditional gardening. You can chase sunlight, protect plants from storms, extend seasons, and redesign your setup whenever needed. Quality potting mix matters too. Cheap soil creates endless frustration. Good soil creates healthy plants. Drainage is non-negotiable. Most container failures come from overwatering and poor drainage, not lack of effort. And don't underestimate the psychological power of visible food production. Seeing growth daily changes your relationship with food, waste, and self-sufficiency.
Conclusion. There you have it. 10 incredible plants that can completely expand your container garden and transform tiny spaces into productive growing systems. Tomatoes for non-stop harvests, peppers for heat-loving abundance, lettuce for fast, continuous salads, strawberries for sweet rewards, green onions for endless regrowth, herbs for flavor and savings, potatoes for serious calorie production, cucumbers for vertical productivity, beans for climbing harvests, and dwarf fruit trees for long-term abundance. The biggest myth in gardening is that you need massive land to grow meaningful food. You don't. You need strategy, you need the right plants, and you need consistency. Start with 1 or 2 crops, learn how they behave, build confidence, expand gradually. That's how real container gardeners create incredible setups over time. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 10 plants are you adding to your container garden first? And what's currently growing in your containers right now? Drop it in the comments because your ideas might inspire someone else to start growing too. If this video helped you rethink what's possible in small spaces, hit the like button and subscribe to Plant Care Secrets TV for more practical gardening methods that actually work. Until next time, keep growing, keep experimenting, and remember this, you don't need a huge garden to create abundance. Sometimes all it takes is one container and the decision to start.